Hi everyone, it's LadyJenevia. Today's video is going to be about defending Jacob. Happy premiere day. For those that have not been keeping up with the other reviews that I have posted, the most recent one was a spoiler-free review of episodes 1, 2, and 3, and today I am going to elaborate on some of the things that I talked about in that video, but this time be more specific because I can now talk about spoilers. So I'm not going to do a full in-depth review discussion because nobody asked me to do those types of reviews for after each episode would air. If that is something that you're interested in, let me know and I will keep that in mind for the coming weeks and remaining episodes left to air. After that, I will do a spoiler-free review of episode 4, which is the episode that will be airing next week. So in case it wasn't clear enough, this is the part where I will be talking about spoilers. So if you have not watched the premiere of Defending Jacob and seen the first 3 episodes, please go and watch them now and then come back afterwards. In my spoiler-free review, there were a couple of shots that I mentioned enjoying as far as cinematography goes, and the second one that I talked about was not one that was in the trailer, so I can now tell you more specifically which one it was, in case you didn't know already. It is in episode 1 where Andy is at home and he is working on the case and he has some files spread out in front of him that he is looking through and the camera is behind and slightly above him. The really sad scene that I was making references to when discussing the show's use of color was the scene where Andy is talking with Ben Rifkin's dad. That scene is taking place in Ben's room, and the room was entirely blue. Did everyone notice that? The walls were painted blue, the bed was blue, color grading was bumped all the way up, blue. Also, when I mentioned how Jacob's earphones are blue, I want to bring that up again because when I was talking about it in my previous spoiler-free review, I had noticed that when he was wearing them, when he was walking home and he saw that there were police waiting for him, and then he decided to go run off because he got scared, as one often does when realizing that police or any type of law enforcement are coming after you. Well, Jacob is wearing those same earphones in a different scene in episode 4, and they barely even look blue because of how drastically different the color grading is. So, to the person that got angry at me for mentioning too many things about color in my last review, get over it. And also, clearly you were the one that missed the point, since all of these things are being done very deliberately, and not giving them proper attention and credit is doing a disservice to the people that worked so hard to put that artistic vision together. So, there's some food for thought. The next point of discussion was something that I previewed where Jacob did something in episode 2 and Andy did the same thing in episode 3. So, if any of you did not notice what that was, I can now tell you. When Jacob has been picked up by the police and he is in the back of the police officer's car, he is wearing handcuffs and he is rubbing his hands together and the camera focuses in on that. It's a gesture to indicate his stress and inner conflict. And then Andy in episode 3, when he is in the courtroom waiting for Jacob to be put in front of the judge, the camera cuts to him doing the exact same thing. I love finding parallels like that in filmmaking. It's just really interesting to me. I don't know if everyone paid attention like I told them to for episode 3 regarding the matter of paying attention to why the episode is called Poker Faces, but if you did not, then I will let you know now. In episode 3, Joanna Klein, that is the defense lawyer working on Jacob's case, she coaches Andy and Lori about the importance of not showing any type of emotion, positive or negative, towards the media. And she talks a bit about how it can impact the court of public opinion. It doesn't necessarily affect the case directly, but it is something that they still have to adhere to, and it doesn't necessarily make things okay. They still have a massive backlash to deal with from the court of public opinion of the community that they live in, but I still found it so interesting. There were a lot of little details like that that I never really would have thought of. I've never been on trial for murder before, so I've never been given that advice. Final point to talk about in the spoiler section of this video is a more lighthearted one, given the subject matter. I think it's only fair that we try to end things on a lighter note. Did everyone see In episode 3, when Andy is going to talk to Laurie when she was watching the news and he tells her that that's not a good idea, he decides to reveal the truth about his childhood and the not so pretty family history that he has in his past. Who stands like that? Why are you grabbing your hips? Who grabs their hips like that in the middle of a dramatic monologue? See, this is why I don't understand, nor do I relate to hot people, because they just don't know how to act like a regular person. You don't know how we live. So those are all the things that I felt like clarifying in regards to the spoiler-free review that I had done for the premiere. Again, I will state that if you want me to do more thorough spoiler discussions of the episodes, I'm willing to do them. You just have to let me know that that's something you're interested in. If you would prefer that I just stick to those spoiler-free reviews that preview and build up the anticipation for the upcoming episodes, I am more than happy to just do that as well. Now is the part where I will do my spoiler-free review of episode 4, which will be airing next week. The episode is called Damage Control. If you watched the very first spoiler-free review that I did for the entire season, there was something that I talked about in that review that is actually from this episode. It was about the show's scoring done by composer Atli Örvarsson. There's a scene in episode 4 where his scoring is just, honestly, 10 out of 10. Excellent execution. Because it starts to creep in gradually and it's really amplifying the tension of what's happening with the characters in the scene and what they're saying to each other. And then when one of the characters decides that this cannot continue, the scoring completely drops off. And the technical precision of that is just so satisfying. Seeing as how the show deals with certain matters related to psychology, I felt compelled to chime in a bit with my own opinion and feedback about how that material applies to the show. If you didn't already know this, I studied psychology in my higher education. There's a very specific line that I wrote down because I wanted to talk a bit about it. The line says, "Our memories are often more unreliable than we think, especially in moments of stress." That's actually very true. There has been a ton of research done on memory and how unreliable it can be. But the reason why this is so interesting to a show that has the story that it does, you can ask someone to recall something that happened in a traumatic situation, and it doesn't necessarily come down to figuring out whether or not they are telling the truth or telling a lie. If someone is not necessarily remembering something correctly, they could think that they're telling you something that's correct, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it is correct. So this makes the mystery of a crime drama all the more compelling, because it's not just about a black and white did they or did they not do something type of situation. Ever since Defending Jacob's embargo lifted and people have been posting their reviews of the series, a lot of people have been praising Chris Evans for his dramatic performance. I don't know why these so-called professionals are acting brand new, like they just discovered that Chris Evans can act. The point is that while I am more than happy to give credit where credit is due as far as he goes as an actor, and I will talk a bit more about his performance later in this review, but first we need to talk about Michelle Dockery because her performance in this episode is so powerful. She has some really good speeches in this episode and she nails every single one of them. In the first 3 episodes that premiered, I think the audience got a lot more of Andy's perspective, both as a parent and as an attorney, but now is when we start to shift the focus a little bit, where you get a lot more of what is happening to Laurie as well. There were also some very specific details about Laurie's arc in this episode that I did not notice when I first binge watched the series, that now upon rewatching it, I have so much more of an appreciation for. So once episode 4 premieres, I do recommend that you immediately go back and rewatch it. So there is one part of her story that I do want to talk about in this episode. There isn't anything in it that is a spoiler for the main drama and mystery of the show, but if you want to go into watching the episode for the first time without any type of giveaway to stuff that's going to happen, then I will put a timestamp in right now that you can skip to so you don't have to listen to this first tangent that I'm going to go on. Laurie has a really deep love love for art, and this is something that gets referenced more than once throughout the season. I didn't really think much of it when I first binged the season, but now that I'm doing a rewatch, I came to some conclusions that I would like to now share. Laurie looks at a painting in this episode. More specifically, it is a painting by Pierre Bonnard. He was a French Impressionist painter. Now, I am no art historian. I had to Google who Pierre Bonnard was, and I had to do a bit of reading about Impressionism because I really wanted to get a better understanding of why this was being included in the show. As I mentioned earlier, episode 3 was called Poker Faces, and the reason for that title was because the lawyer, Joanna, is explaining to them how crucial it is for Andy and Laurie and even Jacob to not be giving away and revealing the truth about their emotions to the larger media spectacle that they are now being subjected to because of this criminal case. This is a necessity to not only the case itself, but in order to be able to keep this family together and keep them safe. Even the smallest micro expression of emotion could have devastating consequences. Impressionism is strongly related to the expression of emotion from the artist through the choice of color and the technique of how you paint and what you choose to paint and so on and so forth. In trying to piece all of this together, the tentative conclusion that I came to is that Laurie has this very strong reaction to seeing this impressionist painting because of the fact that she has been simultaneously been put into a situation where she has to conceal her emotions while also experiencing some of the strongest emotions she probably ever has in her entire life. When she's in public, she has to worry about facing judgment from anyone and everyone around her, and then in private, she still has to put on a brave face because she is a parent trying to protect her child. I know that I've talked a lot about how the color blue is used on the show as this way of indicating cold sadness, but in the case of this painting, the overall impression that it gives is one that is very warm and summery, quite dreamy. The incorporation of this artistic aspect, I think, is intended to ask that question, or perhaps emphasize the question of what happens to a human when you put them through significant emotional stress that they are then not allowed to express. The way that I looked at all of this, the painting is there to not only facilitate the audience having a better understanding of Laurie as a character, but to also address that juxtaposition regarding human emotions. The Barber family are the main characters of the story, and they have undergone a significant trauma that they are now not able to work through properly because they are in the middle of this criminal court case. I don't know if I explained all of this very well. I've never really done a review where I delved deep into art history references. It's definitely not my area of expertise by any means. This episode is really effective at comparing and contrasting Andy and Laurie both as individual characters, but also as parents. You not only get to see how each of them are coping with the stress of the situation that they are now in, but also the very different strategies that they are taking to try to help Jacob as his parents. Now, I know that I will get yelled at if I do not include some sort of discussion that focuses more on Andy as a character in this review. So, of course, I am here to deliver. On a much lighter note, since I know things have been a bit heavy up until this point, there is a line on which the Boston accent jumps out, albeit briefly, but I still noticed it. The line is, "Do you hear me?" except the word "hear," the R in it. It's very subtle, so maybe if you're not looking for it, maybe if you're caught up in the drama of the moment, you might not notice it, but I noticed it, which is why I wrote it down in my notes, to make sure that I let all of you know that that's a thing that's going to happen. Ever since I started posting these reviews of Defending Jacob, I've been getting a lot more interaction on Twitter from Chris Evans' fan pages, so naturally, my curiosity gets the better of me, and I have a look through these pages and I see what they're posting and what's being retweeted in the general discourse about Chris Evans working on this show. And I've noticed a bit that there tends to be a lot of praise placed on this energy that is more so in the realm of being a protective father bear type of character, and he definitely plays that material well. I'm certainly not about to take any credit away from Chris Evans for playing out the more intense dramatic scenes of being that type of protective father character, but it's really refreshing to see some contrast to that, which this episode provides. And more specifically, Chris Evans is so good in these father and son scenes that we have not gotten to see as much of in the previous episodes. A lot of times in filmmaking, the people that are in charge will make sure that they shoot coverage of a scene. More specifically, if you have a scene with two characters, you will not only shoot the person that has the lines of dialogue in the script, you will also shoot the other person that is not speaking, so that when you are editing all of that together, you are able to cut back and forth between the two characters so that you can see how this other person is responding to and engaged in the conversation, even if they're not verbally contributing in that particular moment. What I really like in this episode is that the coverage of Chris is so good. So this comes down to great editing, great directing, and great acting, because of course it makes no difference if Chris is doing a great job in giving these really nice expressions to use when editing the scene together. If it's not edited well together, then it's not going to look right, no matter what he's provided. So this is an episode where you will have Jacob talking, and then the shot will cut to Andy listening. You'll see these very subtle changes. We're talking about micro expressions here. The changes are very small and very subtle, but they are absolutely spot on. The way that it all comes together shows that Andy is fully engaged in this conversation and that he's fully present, and that says a lot about who that character is, and it says a lot about the relationship between father and son that we have not seen before this. Really though, a man who listens, we have no choice but to stand. Finally, it's become sort of an unofficial tradition at this point that when I do these spoiler-free reviews to discuss episodes before they premiere, I offer up a bit of a thirsty tidbit, because I am well aware of what the people want and I'm here to deliver. So today's thirsty tidbit leading up to the premiere of episode 4, I only have 2 words: dripping wet. So make of that what you will. That's going to be it for today's video. Like I said before more than once, if you want me to do more in-depth spoiler discussions of episodes after they air, let me know. I don't have to do them. I'm not trying to twist your arm. If you want me to just stick with the format that I have going, I'm more than happy to do that as well. I have lots of videos that I'm working on, so hopefully some of you are interested in other stuff that I am going to be talking about in upcoming uploads. If you enjoyed this review, please be sure to give it a like before you click off, because it really helps out my channel. And also, let me know in the comments if you want me to do a video on Knives Out, because I've been wanting to do a video on Knives Out for months. No one's telling me that I'm not allowed to. It's just that I always have a million different video topics that I want to do, and I cannot do them all at once, so I have to pick which ones to do first. And Knives Out has definitely been a contender for a while now, but now that I have the attention of a fair few people who like Chris Evans, and Chris Evans is one of the actors in Knives Out, if now is the time to do it, I'm more than happy to do it now. I love that film. Follow me on my social medias. I have Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Vero. See you in the next one. Bye.